Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. It's been a while. Today I got a video that has been requested quite a few times before, and it is about how to create a parallax effect to simulate interiors and many other effects. This is a technique that works really well for some kind of cases. There are other techniques if you need to do something that is more detailed, more realistic. You can use interior mapping, but that technique is a little more complex and also a bit heavier in performance. The parallax technique is very useful for a lot of different scenarios, so I really recommend you have this in your toolkit. And also during the video, I'm gonna create a texture from scratch using Substance Designer. And the texture itself doesn't look very good, to be honest, because I made it quick. The point was to show the process. But I highly recommend you to watch the entire video because there's a lot of tips and tricks and techniques spread all over this video. I hope you enjoy it and it's gonna be useful to you. So have fun. So I'm gonna get started here by altering the textures. I'm gonna use Substance Designer for this, but you can use Photoshop, Substance Painter, whatever you're familiar with, because what's important is just the texture in the end, doesn't matter how you make it. I'm gonna keep this very simple, but I also wanna have some fun with this. So I'm just gonna make a generic brick wall with a window. So let's start with the brick node, or actually I'm gonna use my own tools here because I have a brick generator. And by the way, a lot of the TK nodes that I'm gonna use here, and also this workflow, I explain very in-depth in my stylized texturing tutorial that is available on my Gumroad. So definitely check it out if you want to step up your game on stylized texturing, especially tiling textures. So this node generates just random bricks, and then I'm gonna use a tile sampler to lay out my pattern. So let's set up these parameters here. Symmetry random is a good one. So when I'm making this kind of patterns, I like to have a base look first, and then I add more variation. So see how this looks like. The height to normal. And this one works by putting the size of the surface. So 400 meters is 4 meters for 1 square. And then the depth, which is in centimeters as well. So this is like the highest depth the texture can have. So I imagine like a brick wall, like from the highest brick to the lowest part would be around this high. So let's say 6 centimeters. Looks acceptable. So let's add more input number here. I'm gonna duplicate this 6 times. And they all look the same now, but I'm gonna hit that random seed number. So now each brick will look different. And I can click a few times to get a few different results. And again, if you want to find out how I made this, check out the tutorial on Gumroad, stylized texturing tutorial. I show you how to create your own nodes, so you can kind of develop your own look. Yeah, now that we have a base here, I'm gonna use a histogram range. This is just to clamp this. So because I'm gonna add the window and I want to be able to go up and down in this height. And to make things easier to see, let's plug this into the height. And also let's generate AO. And this one I always use a very low number. You really don't need much. Okay, roughness, let's fix this. So that's a good base to work from. So let's create a window now. So I'm gonna start with a shape. And it's really important to think how many times your texture will tile. And this will be related to the scale that you're working. So this one I'm gonna make 4 meters. Each 4 meters, the texture is gonna tile once. So I'm gonna try to keep the scale here roughly in that dimension. But if you're working, for example, on an office facade, you might want to have like 4 floors, for example, on the texture. So just keep this in mind, the scale is important. So let's say my window is this high. Let's add a frame here. And then we can use another bevel and going inside and use thresholds. This is to select the inner part of it, so we can make a frame here. And this is just one way to do this. There are so many different ways. So something like this, and also we can add a bevel to this one. Let's see what happens. So now we got a little transition there. And we can use the threshold to control how thick this is. So something like this. And let's combine this with the height blend. You can also use blend, the normal blend, but the height blend's cool because it gives a mask. And let's go here. So we don't want to have any bricks there in the middle, right? So we can mask that out. Let's see, maybe with this, I think, yeah, it's not gonna work. So let's try this mask here. And invert. Okay, how can we not have those bricks there? Well, we can simply remove the bricks using this mask. Subtract. Cool. So now we have the frame, we have the mask that we can use later to create the different materials. So let me just adjust this real quick. I don't want to spend too much time on this because it's not really the point of the tutorial, but it's just so it's fun to work on this stuff. Let's make it a little bigger here. There is still a little bit of brick here. Maybe we can use this one. Yeah, that works. So you can go to town here, you know, and add like frames and, you know, like ornaments and stuff, but I'm gonna keep it simple. Also, I'm gonna save this because I'm not an animal. Alright, so now I want to create that inner frame, the window itself. So let's use this mask here. And then we repeat the process. The bevel. But actually this time now I want to add a little division there. So let's subtract from the mask. Something like this. Then we subtract. And then we can move this up. And more bevel. This one, I'm gonna have to figure it out which direction it's gonna go. Kinda confusing. So when I'm working substance, I like to work in lanes like this. So I see like, even if I don't comment the graphs, it's easy to see at a glance what's happening here. Because now I can just add more features to the lanes. So let's add some knobs here. Let's use the height blend again. So this one we need to invert. And let's try this mask. Bam! It's not perfect, but good enough for this tutorial. I would definitely add another... Well, we can try with a curve here. Let's try. So the curve allows you to draw a profile of the bevel. Let's see what we need here. Right. Let's make this a little smaller. Fix this shape. Again, I could spend a lot of time here tweaking these values until they look good, but this is pretty good already. So I think that's good enough for our base height. So let's add some colors, some different materials. Honestly, if I was making this for a production environment, I would finalize this texture in Substance Painter. I would create the masks here in Designer and then finalize in Painter, because in Painter you can use a lot of generators, you can hand paint details, you can get a much more impressive look, I think, than just by purely using a Substance Designer. And maybe if you are like a Substance Designer master and you cringy when you hear this, but there's very few people in the world that can actually make purely substance textures that look crazy. So let's create some masks here. Let's see what we have here. So here we have one that we can invert, and this one or actually I'm gonna build this up. So let's start with the AO. And this will be just for the bricks. Let me grab a picture of a brick. So I found this picture that has some cool colors. I'm gonna move that to my other screen because I'm going to use peak gradient and I'm gonna draw a line in that picture and try to find a cool look. Sometimes you gotta try a few times. Starting to look better. Okay, so I found a good gradient that I can work from, and I'm just gonna tweak it by hand to get the look that I'm going for. With this kind of stylized materials, is all about, you know, using your vision and approximating the look that you're going for. So I think this works pretty well. So I'm trying to get that gray, yes, like around the window there. Try to make it look more natural. So this is good enough. So let's use this one for the frame, and we can even use the same one here. Let's try this. Let's make it a little brighter. This is all approximations. If I was making this for a production environment, it would do things a little differently, you know, like more organized, a bit more modular, but just to show the idea. Now let's add the metal. And again, I'm gonna use the HSL. Let's make that inner frame there. Maybe something like this. And lastly, let's add the window, which we have here. So we have the curve. So let's try a threshold here and invert. So this will be our mask. So let's play here with the threshold value. So here looks like it works. Okay, so we got the base that we can work with. And just for fun, let's add a metallic and roughness. Let's do a quick roughness here. And let's use that's AO as well. And because I'm making this for Unreal, the reflective parts are dark, but if you're using Unity, it's reversed. The reflective parts are white. Let's see how this looks. So this looks okay. If I was gonna finalize this, I would definitely put a lot more work into the window part in the roughness. I would add some scratches, just make it look more interesting there. And you know, before I go, I'm just gonna add a little curvature here, because I think it's gonna add more detail. And again, it's hard to stop work on this, because it's so fun. And I can also do a sharpen here. Make it even more stylized. Okay, so for now, that's the end of the base texture part. So here is my base texture, and now I'm gonna prepare this for the Parallax shader. It's very simple what I have to do. I just have to separate the part that was gonna have the parallax and the part that's not gonna have the parallax. So this means that I need a mask to show the shader where the parallax is gonna be visible. In this case, the glass. So we already have that mask here. So let's drag this, and I'm gonna use levels, maybe like halfway here. You know, just because the window would also have some diffuse there, right? This is gonna help our parallax be more like a little more subtle. And I'm gonna invert this. So what this mask is showing is where it's white, there's no parallax. And the darker it is, the more parallax or the more transparent a surface is. Just for fun here, let's add AO that we already have here. This will help mask out, it will simulate like some dust, like building up on the glass. So something like this. Doesn't need to be too precise right now. And so here we have the base color that's gonna get exported. So let's use an alpha merge, and this is gonna be our alpha, and this is gonna be our texture. So when we export this texture is going to have the base color, and then the alpha map will contain the mask. So now we are ready to export. And just an example, if you're using Photoshop, this is how it would look like. Let's say you have your texture here. Where's the alpha? It's here. So this alpha would be here in the alpha channel, something like this. So the base RGB and then the alpha. And with this, we are ready to start building the parallax shader. Actually, let's pack these textures here into a ORM map, which is AO, roughness, and metallic. So it's RGB merge. And we grab Roughness, Metallic, and the AO to get the ORM map. So all of these are going to be in one map. And let's put an output here, call this ORM. This one we're going to rename to C, A, because it means color and alpha. And this is just for organization. And the normal map is going to be the N. So now let's go to export. Got the ORM, CA, that's all we need. So let's send this, actually this folder works. And now let's jump into Unreal. So here is just a scene that I worked on before and use this as a start. I'm gonna build the shader from scratch. So here let me make sure the normal map faces the right way. Which in Unreal is the green channel is from bottom up. And the ORM, I want to turn off the sRGB because these are grayscale masks. If you have the sRGB, that means it's a linear texture. The gray value is not going to be the gray value that you're thinking. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you can read more online about linear textures and when you should use them. But linear you should only use when it's a color texture. Everything else should not be linear. And I also talk more about this on the Environment Art Mastery tutorial. So let's start by creating a simple material here. And I'll call this Parallax. And let's import textures we have here. We convert those into parameters. So color. And I'm gonna keep it very simple for now. So the base color, normal, AO, roughness, metallic. Oh, look at that. That's what happens when you record live. Okay, that was pretty annoying. I'm gonna create a material instance here. So wall brick window 1. You should always use as few base materials or shaders as possible. Like a lot of people, like when you're a beginner, you want to make a different material, so you duplicate this material here, and then you go in there in the code and and you change those. This is really bad for performance because it creates a lot of different shaders. It's gonna affect how the clustering works in the render. Like it's gonna generate more draw calls and also longer shader compiles and a lot of problems. So definitely stay away from that. Try to use as few materials as possible to create variations. So that's what a material instance is. Because we set those nodes to be a parameter, like now we can change them here if we need to. So let's use a cube. And this is the blockout kit that I use in the Spanish style. Environment Art Mastery is included there, but you don't have to use this. This is just a way that I find is easier for me to build stuff in Unreal. So let's drop our brick there. So right now I can already see that the window is too dark, like it's not reflecting any of the environment. So let's fix that. And it's this part here. Yeah, let's make it brighter. So now that looks better. Let's duplicate it a few times. It's for fun. It's so easy to make stuff that looks good in Unreal. So now let's start implementing our Parallax. And for that, we're gonna need a texture. So we can use photos. Actually, let's use a photo as just for fun. Okay, so the actual Parallax, there are many ways to make this. You can go for a more abstract look, which what usually I do. Or you can use photos, or you can bake this from, you can build a little scene and then bake a screenshot. Doesn't matter. What matters is the perspective should be kind of like front or more abstract. Like for example, this one here wouldn't work, but this one here might work. So let's try. Let's make a new texture. It's gonna make a square texture because I want to match the size of the window that I have there. So I'm just gonna use it like this first. I'll call this Parallax background. import. And now we go back here to our material and we repeat that process. You will see how easy it is to do this. Let's drop this here. All parallax background, because I'm gonna add 2 layers to this. So let's move them here in the back. And so the basic idea is we're gonna lerp this. So we have the lerp, which is the linear interpolation node. This is what you use to blend materials, right? So we have the alpha here, and the white is the B, and the black is the A. So this is gonna be the A. So let's see what happens. And there is not gonna be any parallax now, but you can see the idea. So you see, there we have the window. So now let's add the parallax and you're gonna see how easy it is. Look for bump offset, and in Unity this has a different name, but this is the same workflow, exactly the same. So here's my parallax shader in Unity that I added a few more features, but here it's called parallax mapping, just like this, and the same idea. Here bump offset. Do they have a parallax? Yeah, this is something else. So bump offset and parallax mapping in Unity. This one goes into the UVs. And we need the height, which is how much it's gonna push. So let's add a float. And that's pretty much it. That's all you need. So now let's go to the parameter here and tweak it. So you see now it moves back. Voila. It actually works pretty well. Just the picture like that. Not bad at all. So now it's all about finding like a nice value here. Not bad at all. So you see, because we have that perspective, the effect works pretty well. So right now you're noticing that every window looks the same, and there are a few different strategies to get around this, and they all involve working with UVs. So in my São Paulo scene, the way I got around this is by making bigger textures. So my parallax has 4 floors in one. So for example, let me open this parallax here. Well, actually it has 2 floors. So that's how the background of this parallax texture looks like. I just made a few windows together, right? And yeah, so the mask with the curtains and the base texture like this. You can use different tiling, you know, like your base texture can tile a few times and the parallax can, like here, let me simulate that. For example, I can make the parallax tile more. And so then I have more variation. And another way is you can also write some code to randomize the UVs. But it gets a little harder because the reason why this texture here works so well is because it's not tiling to the sides. So actually helps that we have a frame here. You know, like the brick is hiding the transition, because if this was a pure flat texture, the effect would break, because then you would see the borders. But let's expand this shader here. Let's add emissive. Why not? So very simple. We already have the mask here. Let's take parallax here, multiply by an emissive intensity. We multiply, and now we lerp. Holding L, click on lerp. So this goes here. We use the mask. And then B for now, we can just set it to 0, so no emissive here. B is where the brick is. So let's plug this into emissive. And now we can make our interior shine. Kinda hard to see here because of the lighting. So let me make it darker. So now we got some emissive there, but it's starting to look a little weird. So let's go back to the texture here. And also this texture is like not ideal for that, right? Because it even has windows inside. It's a little crazy. So let's try to add a fade here. Let's fade those edges. Looks a little strange because it's tiling. And in this case, since we have only one window, we can use a trick here. So we go through the parallax texture, and in the options, look for wrap. Here, X tiling, just put on clamp. And now this texture is not gonna tile, it's gonna clamp. So you see, like now it stops. It just repeats the last pixels there. So let's just tone down this a little bit. And I'm gonna try, maybe, let's add a gradient. You need to experiment, you know, to find like a look that works well, but always try in the map itself. So that float that we have, why can't we add a color? Let's add color. So we multiply something like this. And now we can have a few variations because we can make... Oh, I didn't make this a parameter. This one is the yellowish one. But we can make another one that's darker, for example. So let's call this 1B. And then we can play with those parameters. We can make it less emissive. Maybe this one is a little blue. And this is not the most performant way to do this, because, you know, but it works for this specific case here. Works when you're using modular pieces, when you're duplicating them like this. So let's drop here. And one thing that I'm not liking here is the metallic looks weird because it doesn't have that mask. So let's add that, like the dust mask. Let's add it here. So it's very subtle, but should help a little bit. So here you can see the clamp. See what happens? So if we go back here and we make sure that the border pixels are like a flat color, that's not gonna happen. So for example, let's just put like a frame around this, because then it's gonna repeat these pixels here. So you see, I think the parallax is getting a little too intense here. The effect breaks. So you want to be a little subtle with this. If you really push it, it looks very weird. So let's keep it like here. Alright, so before I wrap this up, I want to add another layer there because I only have the background layer, but what if you want to have some blinds, for example? And let me just create another substance here. We just need a texture with a mask, a CA texture like we have before. And we are going to use the lerps to include that. So let's call this blinds. So for example, we can do something like this. So no tiling. Then we use the good old tile sampler. We'll get something that looks blinds. So maybe like this, and then we can do random here. And mask random, let's remove some of them, add a little rotation. So this is enough. Let's create a mask. This one should work. And then we use the RGBA merge, goes into the mask. And let's put the same here, RGBA. So here we have our color. And let's export this. I'm gonna call CA as well. Export. Only the CA I need. So now we got the blinds here. Let's bring them into the shader, and we're gonna repeat this process. So bring the blinds, and let's duplicate this, and let's use like FG for foreground because we want to have a different depth on this one. And now we lerp this. using the mask. This goes into A, this goes into B, the other way around. And now we plug this, and now we got the blinds. So let's fix the emissive. So this is the emissive for the background, right? So let's call this the G emissive. Now we just need to lerp this with the mask. This mask here. Oh, and by the way, this mask, I think it's... No, yeah, it's fine. So let's move this, the lerp, and then let's not have emissive for now. For the blinds. Just to make sure that we have the right order. It gets a little confusing sometimes. Oh, I see the problem here. I'm using the RGBA instead of the alpha as a mask. But it's still not working. Let's do some debugging here. Is it emissive? Is it depth? Okay, that was weird. So I recompiled the shader and now it works. So that's what we are looking for. This one shouldn't be as deep as the background layer because we want to have a little variation there. To finalize this shader, let's add emissive properties for the foreground layer. So we're just going to repeat the same process here. So you see like here, B is where the foreground layer is going to be. So we need to do the same as we did here. So let's duplicate this and set this to white, foreground, and then we can just include this RGB. And now we should have control of the emissive for the foreground layer too. See here? And of course in this case we probably don't want much. Just a little bit, just to simulate that the light from behind is lighting it a little bit. And the last thing that I want to show you is in the background layer we can actually play with this. So let's try to make it a little bit more abstract. So let's use a blur here, just to see what happens. They got a bit more abstract, but it might be a little too much. Let's try another blur. A smart blur. This one is great for removing details and, you know, making the photo look a bit more stylized. And I'm gonna duplicate this and then use a normal, just a Gaussian blur. So let's try now. I think that works a bit better, a bit more convincing, because when you get close, you see there's some details, but you can't really make out what those details are. One thing that I like to play when I have this background texture is to add some lights inside, if it makes sense. So for example, let's add this color dodge, and then we just click a few times. Try to make it look like a light. And duplicate this just for fun. Because we have different values there. You know, the background's a little darker. Those lights should really pop. So you can see that a little bit there. But I think this is a good place to stop. I think this tutorial went a little bit longer than I expected, but I wanted to show the full process. And just as an example, you know, like here, all the parallaxes that I made for Sampa, my project, using the same technique. Just, you know, being smart with how I create the parallax textures, like how I make the glass look believable with the reflections and all that stuff. But it's pretty much the same idea. I use it just 2 or 3 different windows for the entire map. That works pretty well. But yeah, I hope this was useful to you and you learned a thing or two, and let me know in the comments if you enjoy this kind of tutorials, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care. Hey, if you enjoyed this video and you're looking to step up your environment art skills, I invite you to check my environment art creation course, Environment Art Mastery. This is a massive course that took me more than 2 years to put together and contains everything that I learned about environment art creation after more than a decade in the games industry. The course contains everything you need to know to be able to come up with your own ideas and take them to completion by using an easy-to-follow process that breaks down the creative process in logic steps. This process can be used to create all kinds of environments, no matter the style, theme, or engine. If you want to know more, visit environmentartmastery.com or watch the deep dive video in my channel. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again in the next video.